Hi, my name is Madison Carroll, and for my EL 423 Book Review 1, I chose to read A Square Meal, A Culinary History of the Great Depression by Jane Ziegelman and Andrew Coe. This is the cover of the book. This book was published in 2016. I chose the audiobook route because it's more practical for my life. This book opens up right after World War I and explains food and how they lived in the 1920s and then into the 1930s. It gives you a foundation of the 20s before you learn about the 30s, because that helps you understand the change that they went through and how drastic it was. It talks about the coming of pre-prepared foods and foods that were like canned, frozen, and refrigerated, because that was a brand new thing in the 20s. It really made the housewives' lives easier because they could just pull something out of the freezer or open a can and dinner would be ready. They also discovered nutrition facts, so this brought on a lot of fad diets because they understood what was in their food and the calories and how many calories you needed. Most menus were based on a 2,000 calorie diet, as most are today. They also learned that food did not need to taste good in order to be nutritious. So during the 30s, this caused the food lines to not make their food taste as good, but it was still just as nutritious. So the idea was, if the food didn't taste good, people would want to get jobs so they didn't have to go to the food lines so they could afford their own food. I did read every word on every page of this entire book, cover to cover, or in my case, I listened to it. I liked the book because I like culinary history, but this book was very strictly informative. There was no sort of storyline that you could follow, and I like books that have storylines. I would have liked it better had it maybe started with a family and how they ate and lived right after the war into the 20s and then into the 30s, and how drastic their life changed during all those time periods. I liked how it talked about the school-age children and how they ate at school, and how because they ate at school, that gave more food for the people at home, their parents or siblings who didn't attend school yet. It incorporated a lot of menus and a lot of recipes, and that did keep me engaged. Lots of the common recipes were very, very interesting. A common lunch would have been, in the 30s, would have been a whole onion baked into tomato sauce. I wouldn't have liked it, but that's what they ate a lot because it was cheap. They stressed the importance of milk. Milk is very nutritious, and they knew that, so they knew that they could get the nutrients they needed by drinking a pint for adults and a quart for children a day. I liked how it talked so much about the American housewife and how she went to conferences and tried to learn as much as she could so that she could better feed her family and nourish them on a budget, because nobody could afford anything. It talked about how if you had chickens, because of the price of eggs, you couldn't afford to sell them because you needed to eat them, and that if you didn't have chickens, that you couldn't afford to buy eggs because they were so expensive if people were selling them. My lesson plan was based on grocery shopping in the 1930s, so after watching a video about food and meals common meals during the 1930s, my students were given a budget of $3 and a shopping list, and they had to go around the room and shop for the fake groceries and stay under their budget and get everything on their list. If they needed to make accommodations, they could, and then after, they would sit down as a group and brainstorm different meals they could make. The grocery list would come from meals from the video, but they didn't know that. The video would kind of be shown to inspire them on what they could do later. Hopefully they would make that connection. If not, maybe they could come up with something completely different, maybe even better. After that, they would compare today's prices to the 1930s prices of the same item, and they would fill out a chart, and it would be evaluated based on how many items they found in that chart. I really enjoyed this assignment, and I look forward to the next one.